Hello, everyone. My name is Lance Avitz, and today I'm going to be presenting my PowerPoint presentation on mass incarceration and racial disparities in the United States. The United States has the highest incarceration rate in the world. We hold nearly one fifth of the world's prisoners, even though we make up less than 5% of the global population. However, this problem doesn't affect everyone equally. About one third of the US prison population is African American, even though African Americans make up only about 13% of the total population. In 2021, African Americans were imprisoned at a nearly five times the rate of white Americans. Mass incarceration, however, didn't just appear out of nowhere. It's part of a much longer story about racial inequality in this country. And it matters because its impact reaches far beyond prisons. It shapes families, schools, and even entire communities. In this presentation, I'll talk about where this system came from and how it continues to affect education and how awareness and reform can help create change. To understand mass incarceration, we have to look at how it began. So, after the Civil War, many Southern states passed laws called Black Codes that criminalized newly freed African Americans for things like loitering or not having proof of employment. Those who were arrested were leased out as forced laborers, what some historians now call slavery by another name. Later, during the Jim Crow era, laws enforced segregation and police practices continued to target black communities. Then, in the 1970s and 80s, the war on drugs and tough on crime policies caused the prison population to explode, increasing by about 400% between 1980 and 2000. Most of those arrests were for non violent drug offenses, which unfortunately hit Black and Latino neighborhoods the hardest. And even though the laws have changed, the biases that drove those systems haven't disappeared. They just evolved. You could see that today in things like racial profiling and even how something as small as fashion can be criminalized, like recent bans on shiesty masks in Philadelphia. Right now, there are over 2 million people in US prisons. That's an incarceration rate of about 629 people for every 100,000 residents, the highest rate in the world. One in 19 Black men in America is currently incarcerated, compared to 1 in 125 white men. For Latino men, it's about 1 in 45. And while men make up most of the prison population, the number of incarcerated women has risen dramatically as well, up nearly 700% since 1980. And of course, black women are still twice as likely to be in prison as white women, so that racial disparity still exists independent of sex. These numbers don't just show individual cases, they show a system that treats people differently based on race and class. Factors like sentencing laws, racial profiling, and poverty all interact to keep these disparities alive and well in the United States. One of the clearest ways these inequalities show up outside of prisons is in schools. A lot of people refer to this as the school to prison pipeline. Black students are about three times more likely to be suspended or expelled than white students, often for the same behaviors. Students with disabilities make up only 12% of total enrollment, but account for 25% of students arrested or referred to law enforcement. Disabilities could range from anything like dyslexia or ADHD or ADD, meaning the student is just not suited to the Eurocentric classroom environment. Maybe they might be benefited from another type of teaching environment, but the schools just don't put in the effort to find out. They just refer them to law enforcement for any deviant behavior. So, in schools that have police officers, minor issues that used to be handled by teachers or counselors are now being treated as criminal offenses, leading to arrest rates that are five times higher in those schools. At the same time, many schools still enforce rules that punish parts of students' culture, from language and hairstyling to clothing styles, which sends a harmful message about whose identity is accepted. We did an entire assignment on this problem in this class. The good news, though, is that change is possible. Research shows that restorative justice programs and behavior interventions can cut disciplinary disparities by as much as 40%. So when schools shift their approach from punishment to understanding, outcomes improve for everyone. There have been efforts to address mass incarceration through reform, but the progress has been unfortunately uneven and very slow. In the justice system, states like New Jersey, Illinois, and New York have started to reform their cash bail system, helping reduce how many people are jailed before trial simply because they can't afford bail. There have also been proposals to end mandatory minimum sentences and invest in rehabilitation and reentry programs, though funding and political support often fall short for those programs. In education, cities like Oakland, Denver, and Chicago have issued restorative justice programs to reduce suspensions and improve the school climate for students. Many teachers' education programs now include equity and bias training, helping new teachers create more inclusive classrooms for every student. And studies even show that investing in early education can lower the risk of future incarceration by around 30%. When we combine reforms in justice, education, and community programs, we can hopefully start to see the groundwork for long term change. So, where does education and educators, where do they fit into all of this? For future educators, it's really a very important. Well, for anybody entering any career field, it's important to understand cultural humility. That means reflecting on your own biases and being aware of how systems like education and justice can be interconnected. Teachers have the power to either reinforce or challenge inequality at a very early stage in children's lives. They can build classrooms that are inclusive, supportive, and empathetic, or they could build the opposite. So, by challenging stereotypes, using culturally responsive teaching, and advocating for fairness, educators can help break cycles of inequality and reinforce the idea that change doesn't just happen in policy, it starts in our everyday lives. Anyways, that brings me to my conclusion. Mass incarceration reflects a deep rooted racial and economic inequality in the United States, and its effects ripple across families, schools, communities, and even throughout entire cultures and subcultures within the United States. In order to address it effectively, we need to be aware that it is real, that it is still a problem in the United States. We have to support advocacy groups and movements that help to abolish these systems. And we have to support and vote for systemic reform and social change in the justice system and the education system. And for any future educators, it's important that you understand that you can disrupt these harmful cycles of incarceration and racial disparity by promoting lasting social justice in classrooms and empathetic, providing an empathetic teaching environment or learning environment for every single student, not just the ones that can conform to the Eurocentric classroom. Anyways, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed my presentation. Have a great day, and thank you for watching.